According to statistics of the General Staff of the Armed Forces of Ukraine, in the past week alone, Russia has launched a total of 95 missiles of different types. 34 of them were shot down. The attacks mainly targeted the energy infrastructure of large cities. As a result, more than 500,000 residents of Kharkiv, Ukraine's second-largest city, have had to live without electricity. This situation once again raised concerns about how Ukraine will cope with the Russian missile bombardment. Some Western military experts say that Ukraine is struggling with the current difficult situation, but Russia's air attacks are not enough to bring them to Ukraine. Air Force researcher Justin Bronk of the Royal Unified Public Affairs Institute told CNN that, historically, many countries have used missile strikes to disrupt an opponent's will to fight, but most fail. According to Bronk, Russia's limited missile stockpile is unlikely to make a big breakthrough in air battles. Russia has pursued a strategy of using different types of missiles, but there is still a large gap between each strike. The West has limited the supply of hypersonic missiles to Ukraine because it does not want to enter the race to pursue hypersonic weapons with Russia. However, Bronk, what Ukraine is facing is a missile that is difficult to intercept, and their adversaries have also become less alert. In just 1 week, Russia launched many modern Kinzhal missiles over many provinces in Ukraine. These hypersonic missiles can carry nuclear warheads and evade radar systems. Sharing with Newsweek recently, former NATO Supreme Allied Commander, James Stavridis listed 3 reasons behind Russia's rush to use Kinzhal missiles in the war in Ukraine. On Meet the Press, Stavridis was asked if Russia's use of modern Kinzhal missiles is proof that the country is running out of missiles. Stavridis replied that he did not rule out this possibility and gave some other explanations. The Russians love to show off their hypersonic capabilities, said Stavridis. The Russian army is in a war, so this is their chance to do it. But Russia doesn't have many Kinzhal missiles left. There are 3 reasons for Russia to use Kinzhal in Ukraine even if they don't have many left. According to Stavridis, the first is that the Moscow military has actually run out of these hypersonic missiles. The second is to find a way to demonstrate strong military capabilities. And finally, Moscow wants to completely destroy the Ukrainian electricity grid, because the cold of winter remains. However, Stavridis said that Russia was completely wrong with the strategy of wanting to lose the will of the Ukrainian people. Other experts say that Russia's use of Kinzhal hypersonic missiles across Ukraine could change the dynamics of the war and lead to a further escalation of the conflict. Ukrainian Air Force spokesman Yuri Ihnat also said, it was an attack that the Air Force had never seen before. Russia's hypersonic missiles are really difficult to intercept. However, Ukrainian officials said they were able to shoot down modern Russian missiles with the US-supplied Patriot air defense system. Political expert Lubomir Lusiak of the Imperial University of Canada said that Russia's move to use Kinzhal missiles is very worrying, when the Patriot system has not yet been deployed in the Ukrainian battlefield due to the soldiers of the Russian Federation. This country is still in the training period. The war in Ukraine has entered its 2nd year and the fighting is heating up as winter passes. In particular, the battle between Russia and Ukraine in Bakhmut brought the conflict to a near stalemate. Faced with that situation, military analyst for major news agencies like Sky News and BBC Sean Bell said that President Zelensky faces 2 extremely difficult choices for Ukraine to regain the upper hand. The following is Bell's analysis: Ukraine's leaders must choose an option that is to continue fighting with Russia in the traditional way, in which there is a high probability that Russia will have an advantage because of the large size of its force, or adapt in the direction other. Indeed, the Russian battle in Ukraine was so intense and draining that it shocked the whole civilized world. The Moscow army is fighting in a way that uses large numbers of soldiers to overwhelm. This tactic is very different from the Western approach to war. The West often makes assumptions and bigger studio plans. That difference has had a profound impact on Ukraine. Drawing lessons from the 2 world wars, with battles of attrition and heavy casualties, the West has re-examined its military doctrine. Although every war uses soldiers to fight, it is the leaders who give the order to proceed. Indiscriminate destruction is completely unprofitable even after peace is restored. Therefore, the West has developed mobile warfare by using high-tech weapons to destroy the will of the opponent to fight. Russia and Ukraine share similar heritages in history and tradition. Ancient wars used large numbers of soldiers to create brutal battles. New weapons are often questioned. The strongest and most numerous side will prevail. Russia is adopting this tactic. Therefore, Ukraine should do the opposite by taking advantage of Western high-tech weapons for military advantage. Culturally, however, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky seems to be challenged by this choice. The long and bloody battles in Bakhmut exposed many problems. Bakhmut was not inherently an important military target. Allies have supported Ukraine to withdraw its troops from Bakhmut to reserve resources for battles elsewhere. This is considered the Western approach to mobile warfare. However, President Zelensky decided to strengthen the defenses of Bakhmut, so the Ukrainian army was dragged into a war of attrition. Ukraine knows that the supply of modern Western weapons is not endless. At the same time, the ultimate priority remains to ensure Ukraine's survival. President Zelensky is facing difficult choices to make a final decision. French President Emmanuel Macron and Prime Minister Rishi Sunak are giving a news conference in Paris. Mr. Macron says France and the UK are doing everything so that the war does not spread to other parts of the world. He adds that the talks with Mr. Sunak in Paris have been a reconnection and a new beginning for the relationship between the two countries, and has allowed them to better coordinate and build together. We have decided on concrete action together on the training of Ukrainian military and high-value segments, he adds. Mr. Sunak says the UK will train Ukrainian Marines amid the war in Ukraine. We've agreed to train Ukrainian Marines, helping to give Ukraine a decisive advantage on the battlefield and for Ukraine to win this war, he adds. On March 10, British Prime Minister Rishi Sunak confirmed to the media that the Russia-Ukraine conflict would end through negotiations, but that would not happen at this time. In an interview on the train to France, Sunak said, "The Eastern European war will end on the negotiating table like any other war. But that is up to Ukraine's discretion right now. The priority is to provide the Kyiv army with the resources and training to give them an edge on the battlefield." Sunak confirmed that the Allies are still working to help Ukraine strengthen its position for future negotiations by helping Ukraine gain an upper hand over the Russian military. Russia has repeatedly stated that it is ready for dialogue with Ukraine on the condition that the government accept the territories that President Putin announced to be annexed as part of the Russian Federation. The Kyiv side resolutely refused and affirmed that it would not let any territory return, including the Crimean Peninsula. Switzerland's government will not change its long-standing policy banning the transfer of Swiss-made arms to a third country. The refusal comes amid growing pressure from European nations to export them to Ukraine. Calls for Switzerland to break with centuries of tradition as a neutral state have been growing both internally and externally since Russia's invasion began. In January, 2 parliamentary committees recommended that the rules be eased. However, the cabinet rejected the call following a meeting. The Federal Council is committed to the values of Swiss neutrality and will continue to work to ensure the benefits of neutrality are realized, it said in a statement. However, it said it would continue to monitor the debates and make a further statement if necessary. Switzerland has received requests from Germany, Denmark, and Spain for the re-export of Swiss war material to Ukraine, but all of those requests were denied. Russia has been capturing some of the US and NATO-provided weapons and equipment left on the battlefield in Ukraine and sending them to Iran over the last year. US, NATO, and other Western officials have seen several instances of Russian forces seizing smaller, including Javelin anti-tank and Stinger anti-aircraft systems that Ukrainian forces have at times been forced to leave behind on the battlefield. In many of those cases, Russia has then flown the equipment to Iran to dismantle and analyze. Likely so the Iranian military can attempt to make their own version of the weapons. Sources said Russia believes that continuing to provide captured Western weapons to Iran will incentivize Tehran to maintain its support for Russia's war in Ukraine, the sources said. It's not clear if Iran has successfully reverse-engineered any US weapons taken in Ukraine, but Tehran has proven highly adept at developing weapons systems based on US equipment seized in the past. A key weapon in Iran's inventory, the Tufan anti-tank guided missile, was reverse-engineered from the American BGM-71 TOW missile in the 1970s. The coordination is yet another example of Moscow's growing defense partnership with Tehran, which has intensified over the last year as Russia has become increasingly desperate for external military support for its war against Ukraine. CNN has reached out to the Russian embassy in Washington and the Iranian UN mission for comment. On March 10, Serbian President Aleksandar Vučić accused the Kosovo government of trying to provoke a war with Serbia, in which Kosovo would receive NATO support. They want to draw Serbia into conflict with NATO, Vučić said. President Kurdi of Kosovo wants to be like Zelensky of Ukraine, and I will be like Putin of Russia. That is what Kosovo has done in recent years with the support of an important part of the international community. Kosovo is like the child of this group. Vučić mentioned the conflict with Kosovo that began in 1998 to 1999 and Kosovo's declaration of independence in 2008. He said, "They don't want to normalize relations and just want to humiliate Serbia. But I absolutely do not give up." The proposed mediation agreement between Pristina and Belgrade was announced by the EU last month. However, some argue that this would be the same as recognizing Kosovo as an independent entity. President Vučić stated, "We are preparing for the upcoming negotiations. But I will not agree to any such terms." Recently, Mexican President Andrés Manuel López Obrador declared that the fentanyl crisis that kills tens of thousands of Americans each year was caused by the United States. According to RT, drug cartels have been transporting synthetic fentanyl and methamphetamine-backed D4 across the U.S.-Mexico border for drug production in large laboratories. The Mexican government says fentanyl is rarely used in the country. "We do not produce and consume fentanyl here," said President López Obrador. The U.S. government should solve the problems in its society instead of waging war on drug cartels. López Obrador said that the problem of flooding in the U.S. is related to the problems of many families in the U.S., when American parents often get divorced or children do not bond with their parents. Mr. López Obrador's statement came after U.S. Senator Lindsey Graham wanted to call for a war against Mexican drug cartels at the U.S. border. Graham has said that it is not invading Mexico but destroying the drug labs that are poisoning Americans. President López Obrador criticized Senator Graham's words as insulting to Mexico's sovereignty and independence. The U.S. State Department said on March 10 that the head of the department, Antony Blinken, will start his Africa tour next week, with 2 stops in Ethiopia and Niger. The visit comes as the Biden administration is stepping up cooperation with the continent to deal with China's growing influence in the continent. U.S. Secretary of State Blinken will visit Ethiopia's capital Addis Ababa and Niamey's capital from March 14. Under the plan, the top U.S. diplomat will discuss with local officials a peace agreement to end the conflict in the Tigray region, northern Ethiopia, and counterterrorism efforts in Niger and the Sahel region. This is Blinken's first trip to Niger and the 4th high-level visit to Africa this year by top government officials in the Biden administration. On March 10, in the U.S., the rising star of the Republican Party, Florida Governor Ron DeSantis, arrived in Iowa, one of the states where the earliest primaries were held. DeSantis delivered the message to the Iowa public just days before former President Donald Trump arrived here to promote his campaign. During a public address, DeSantis declared, "The culture of awakening will weaken our country." DeSantis talked about the success of the state of Florida in policies related to the COVID-19 epidemic. In 2021, the state passed a law banning schools and businesses from requiring a COVID-19 vaccine. "We're not letting our state get into a situation where people's jobs are destroyed and freedoms curtailed," he said. Florida has chosen freedom, not forcing people to vaccinate like other states. "In the end, we were right and they were wrong." DeSantis is expected to officially enter the race for the White House later this spring. The state of Iowa will hold its first Republican primaries in early 2024. Polls show DeSantis as a potential candidate to take on Trump in Iowa. Although DeSantis has never officially announced he will run for president, the trip to Iowa is part of a series of events for him to attract his supporters. The Toronto School Board, TDSB, has become the first education system in Canada to recognize the caste system in the city's schools and requires the local human rights agency to come up with a set of rules for wide application. The Toronto District School Board yesterday voted to approve a motion to recognize the caste system proposed by board member Yelini Rajakulasingam. 1621 members voted in favor. This move has important implications for the South Asian community living in the region, especially those of Indian and Hindu descent. The Indian caste system dates back thousands of years, with 4 basic castes: clergy, nobles and soldiers, merchants, and slaves. The upper classes enjoyed many privileges while the lower classes were oppressed. India's caste system is one of the oldest forms of social stratification in the world, generating arguments for rigidity and human rights abuses. According to Rajalukasingam, this action should not create division, even help heal the religious life of the communities, creating a safer educational environment that students deserve. Caste division was banned in India 70 years ago, but bias and imposition still exist in social life. This move is likely to provoke criticism from equality activists, who say the caste system is a form of discrimination and racism. A few weeks ago, Seattle became the first U.S. city to ban caste practice. Officials in the German capital of Berlin have introduced new rules for public swimming pools and bathing facilities, allowing women to use them topless. The policy change was triggered by a successful anti-discrimination complaint filed by a 33-year-old female pool-goer. The woman was asked by the supervisory staff at one of the Berlin pools to cover her breasts during a visit to the facility back in December 2022. After she refused, the staff made her leave the pool. It is not clear when the new rule will apply. Berlin is not the first German city to introduce such rules. The city of Siegen in the northwestern state of North Rhine-Westphalia and Göttingen in the neighboring Lower Saxony region also did so in 2022. Ladies and gentlemen, Spain's Canary Islands continue to be a hotbed of migration. Recently, 48 migrants, including 24 women, some pregnant and 6 children, were discovered and rescued by the country's Coast Guard while trying to cross the sea on a rough boat. Sketchy, rickety. On the evening of March 10 local time, security officers found a group of migrants in an area about 160 kilometers off the coast of Spain. These people were then taken to the port of Arguineguin on the island of Gran Canaria and examined for medical purposes. All are in good health. Located about 60 kilometers off the coast of Morocco, Spain's Canary Islands have in recent years become a major destination for migrants, mainly from North Africa, on their journey across the seas in search of a good life. Then in Europe. According to data from the Spanish Interior Ministry, in the first 2 months of the year the country recorded a total of nearly 1,900 migrants crossing the sea to the Canary Islands illegally, 66% lower than the same period a year ago. Emergency services for the state of Queensland, Eastern Australia are urgently evacuating people to higher areas, amid heavy rains causing flooding that has devastated large parts of the state. Police said on March 11 that 53 residents of the coastal town of Bucktown had been taken to safety, while about 100 others had not yet been evacuated. Security forces are continuing to urge people to leave urgently as the weather agency predicts river levels in the area will peak tomorrow, March 12. The Australian Bureau of Meteorology said flooding in Bucktown has surpassed the record set in March 2011 of 6.87 meters after up to 293 millimeters of rain fell on the place for 2 consecutive days, the 9th and the 10th of March. Meanwhile, in Gregory, about 120 kilometers south of Bucktown, flood impacts have not been updated due to poor communication. Eastern Australia in the past 2 years has continuously witnessed severe flooding due to the La Niña phenomenon. In January, record flooding hit the neighboring northwest, leaving many communities isolated. Paris Saint-Germain club will send an official offer to bid for the ownership of Stade de France Stadium, the symbol of French football, to replace the Parc of the Princes stadium that the Ligue 1 team is using. Earlier, the mayor of Paris, Anne Hidalgo, confirmed that the Stade de France was not for sale. Stade de France is the largest stadium in France, with a capacity of more than 80,000 seats, used to host the 1998 World Cup final and 3 UEFA Champions League finals since 2000, including the final match, last year's match between Real Madrid and Liverpool. A spokesman for the Paris Saint-Germain club said that the capital team will send a bid proposal to the management agency, and shared that the team's top priority remains the project of planning the Parc of the Princes. This is a stadium owned by the City Council of Paris, the home ground of PSG since 1974. By 2013, the team reached an agreement to extend the contract until 2043 with a plan to upgrade the stadium with a cost of €75 million. PSG still has another option to build a new stadium outside the city of Paris. Since being invested by the super-rich in Qatar in 2011, PSG has become the most successful club in France and has an influence on European football. The team has many superstars like Messi, Mbappe, and Neymar. Recently, Disney CEO Bob Iger said that they are reviewing the investment in producing sequels in the popular Star Wars and Marvel series, after the recent films of this series did not achieve the profit as expected. Speaking at a technology and media conference in San Francisco, Iger said Disney will focus more on quality rather than quantity, to avoid spreading without efficiency. According to the CEO, the company has spent too much budget to produce TV series and movies with skyrocketing numbers. When it comes to Marvel, Iger said, The number of films produced is not necessarily too much, but it is necessary to consider how many old characters should continue to be exploited. Is it necessary to have part 3, part 4, or should I switch to a new character line? He also confirmed that in the future there will be a whole new set of Avengers characters, not based on the old characters. As for the long-standing hit series Star Wars, the Disney CEO said that the 2016 Rogue One spin-off achieved the expected success, but the 2018 sequel Solo was not. The film not only failed at the box office but was also ignored by the critics. Bob Iger served as CEO of Disney from 2015 to 2020, the golden age of the Marvel Universe. He returned to this position in 2022, after his successor, Bob Chapek, was suddenly fired. Last month, Disney announced new projects including Zootopia 2, Frozen 3, and Toy Story 5. Northern England's Lancashire area is experiencing freezing temperatures. While the staff of the Bleakholt Sanctuary Farm and Small Animals Animal Sanctuary tried to keep the animals warm, the 2 black pigs could not stand the sight of having to stay indoors all day. Despite the cold weather and everything around them frozen white, 2 black pigs, Harold and Madge, left the barn at Bleakholt Sanctuary Farm, venturing out for a walk on Friday. The 2 black pigs are named after 2 characters from the famous Australian opera Neighbours. They and many other animals are being kept warm by conservation staff to survive the freezing weather in the UK in recent days. The staff at Bleakholt provided extra blankets and coats for the animals, extra food and frequent water changes to prevent freezing. The UK Met Office has warned temperatures will drop below 0 degrees Celsius overnight, with heavy snowfall and freezing in Lancashire, where the reserve is to last until this Saturday. A critically endangered black rhino was born at the Dvor Králov Safari Park in the Czech Republic. This is also the 3rd black rhino of the year born here. The newborn black rhino is a male, weighing 36 kilograms, in good condition, named Magashi after a peninsula in Rwanda. This is also where the mother rhino was brought back to the Czech Republic in 2018. This is an endangered animal. In the past year only 6 black rhinos have been born in zoos around the world, 3 of them here, and this is amazing. Magashi is the first child of Father Mbu from Chester, UK in 2020 and Lucky mother Maisha. According to Jan Zdarek, the birth process is quick and easy. Magashi will stay in the cage with her mother for a few days until the weather gets warmer, expected to be the middle of next week. The staff will take the animal out in the wild for the first time. Kiska, the last captive killer whale in Canada, died yesterday at the Marineland Aquarium. The animal is known as the loneliest whale on the planet. Brent Ross, spokesman for the province of Ontario, said, Marineland Aquarium announced the death of Kiska whale on March 9. An autopsy on the carcass was conducted by marine biology experts. Kiska was captured in Irish waters in 1979, when the animal was about 47 years old. Marineland, of the Niagara Falls Amusement Park, Ontario, says the animal's health has declined significantly in recent times. Canadian nonprofit Animal Justice has called for an investigation into Marineland's treatment of the killer whale. Previously, the animal welfare organization People for the Ethical Treatment of Animals, PETA, called Kiska the loneliest whale in the world. Her life was simply tragedy after tragedy, when both its 5 children all died before the age of 7. Brent Ross said the Marineland Aquarium has been inspected 160 times since January 2020 to ensure the animal care standards required by law.